much, Pedro. So welcome everyone to today's session. I'm Caroline. Wait, Zoom is just telling me that it's being recorded. So I'm happy that the panelists are still with me on board, even though we are streamed and recorded and everybody is watching us. So I'm Caroline. I work for the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, and I work on an area called digital networking. So I guess this is what kinds of made me come here tonight. I'm very, very delighted to be here with you today and to host today's session, which is, I think, a very important aspect we're shedding light to, because the fintech segments in Germany and Brazil are growing rapidly. While the traditional banking markets in the countries are quite different, I think we might speak of an oligopoly in Brazil with quite a huge part of the population without access to banking. The banking sector in Germany is traditionally highly diversified and quite accessible. Yet, which is interesting, in both countries, we really have a huge need for innovation, which is fostering a development of a flourishing fintech sector. And therefore, both countries are attracting huge investments in the past 2 years. We now want to shed a light on the respective ecosystems for fintechs and understand where the synergies lie and how we can benefit from each other, and maybe also, of course, of the inner synergies of the other markets. I'm very happy to welcome today 4 very prominent players of these ecosystems that are able to give us an unmatchable insight. So let me shortly introduce our panelists of today. So there's Caroline Wies. She's partner sales lead at SumUp since August 2020. As such, she's responsible for building strategic partnerships, as well as scaling and optimizing sales and partnership organization. SumUp is one of the world's leading mobile payment companies, with operations in more than 33 countries, including Germany and Brazil. Caroline is currently in Berlin. Then we have Eduardo Del Guerra Prota, who is the general manager of the German online bank N26 in Brazil since, I hope I'm right, beginning of 2019. In this position, he is responsible for setting up the company's activity in Brazil. N26 offers banking services to clients in 25 countries, and I very much hope that Brazil will be the number 26, because in January this year, N26 obtained the banking license in Brazil. The next panelist is Sergio Costantini. I'm sorry, Sergio. He is the general manager of the German Fintech Mambu in Brazil. Since November last year. Mambu offers a core banking platform and is present in more than 60 countries. Sergio is very experienced and has more than 30 years been working in financial markets. And then last but at all not least, Delbert Lage is CEO of the London-based fintech SalaryFits. He's a lawyer and he heads the company since beginning of 2016. SalaryFits is a platform that allows financial institutions to directly communicate with employees. The company is present in 6 countries. He's in Belo Horizonte, and the other 2 gentlemen are in São Paulo, we already found out. So we are quite diversified geographically. I would suggest we start a little introductory round where each of you could maybe briefly line out for us the perception of the strengths and weaknesses of the German and or the Brazilian financial market and the conditions for fintech. So how is it to enter the market of the respective other countries? Maybe we start with the lady. Caroline, please.
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, nice to meet everyone. As Caroline said, I'm the partnerships acquisition lead for SumUp since August last year. And we're based in Berlin. Of course, we're headquartered in London, but that said, looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the market, I would say I experience this myself every day. As you said in the beginning, Germany is a highly diversified market when it comes in regards to access to banking. But when it comes to actually taking payment services, or everyone knows that setting, you walk into a restaurant, you walk into a späti, and it says no card acceptance or cash only. This is actually one of my favorite sentences. And I would say this identifies very much the strength, but also the weakness of the German market, given that Germans are cash loving. And I would say, I hope I speak for most of the Germans to say that this is a blessing and a curse at the same time. So what we clearly see, Germany is a very, challenging market in the sense that the adoption of taking digital payments are definitely something which we're constantly working on. On the other side, once Germany is going for something, right, such as we can see in the banking sector, it's a very diversified sector, and that said, it's very accessible to everyone. So there's clearly a strength when it comes to, let's say, more conservative decision making, but then also weakness when it comes to the adoption of more innovative products, such as neobanks. We have N26 on the panel, but then also payment services such as SumUp, for instance.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Maybe we continue with Eduardo. Can you tell us about the experiences of N26 in Brazil?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Caroline. It's very nice to be with everyone here. So I'm leading N26 in Brazil since 2019. Just to give a brief context, we started in 2019, but then we paused during 2020, mostly due to the pandemics, and then we received our license, an SCDA license, by the end of the year, 2020, and now we have full on back to the market, to expecting to launch beginning next year. Okay, so. And this, I think the strategy that we plan to launch here in Brazil, I think tells a little bit about the differences between the two countries, and also tells our strategy to approach the market. So N26 wants to be a global player, helping over 100 million users around the globe. We currently have 25 countries, as mentioned. Brazil will be the 26th, which is a great honor for us here. But we do want to be a local player. So we want to be a global player with a very strong local strategy. So instead of just maybe reaching different countries to offer international services, help international travelers, or that kind of thing, we actually want to offer local products, Pix, credit card, and so on. And all those different payment schemes are very different than what we have in German, right? So just explaining what a boleto is for Germans is kind of a long and difficult job. Moreover, we use credit cards here in a so much different way. So we actually use it for everyday expenses. We use it for getting points. We use it for actually making payment installments, actually making possible that we buy some stuff, right? Germans, as far as I have understand their culture so far, and please, those who are German, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they use credit card as a credit, right? So for them, actually saying that we use a credit card just to make a payment is kind of yeah, why are you doing that if you have the money, right? So overall, the way we use financial products is very different. So because of that, we have chosen to have a very local strategy. So we have a local team building from the ground up all the technology, all the product, all the marketing strategy. So really trying to figure out what the Brazilian population need in terms of financial services, and to offer that using everything that N26 has learned in all the 25 countries. So offering great UX, great user experience, and a very a positioning connected to financial planning. So in a nutshell, I think that's what we plan to do in Brazil, and why we have chose that strategy, given that we are coming from such a different country from Brazil.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. Maybe you want to continue, Sergio? What about the experiences of Mambu in Brazil?
Sure. Thank you very much, Caroline. So firstly, I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity. I'd like to thank Pedro Ivo for inviting me, and Caroline, for moderating this panel. It's going to be an honor to share this space here with Caroline, Delber, and Eduardo. So I'm, as you guys said before, so I'm the general manager for Mambu in Brazil. So I will try to contribute to the discussion here trying to focus in my initial thoughts on the Brazilian financial and fintech markets, okay? So let me try to summarize some of the trends that we are facing in Brazil at the moment. So firstly, open banking is being implemented in the course of 2021. So based on a huge effort made by financial institutions and the coordination of central bank here, our regulation is pretty much similar to the European one. And as you guys know, so it guarantees the sharing of data, banking transactional history, you know, among all financial institutions, including fintechs, obviously upon the previous authorization, you know, from the client. We're still running the second phase of the original plan. So it was a 1-year implementation plan. We should be finalized by December, but the timeline is being reviewed given the complexity of the project, okay? My view is that, so this is a changing point for the market dynamics here, and will bring a new competitive landscape given that open banking will demand major innovations and will certainly go beyond the boundaries of financial markets in Brazil. So we are really focusing on open finance, which includes investments, insurance, FX, and etc. Another wave here is what we call embedded finance, which is a term used to describe other financial services offered by companies that do not have a banking DNA, let me put it this way. We are talking about newcomers such as retailers, utilities like energy distributors, telecom companies, and other financial players, local financial, non-financial players in Brazil. It is interesting because these players have huge portfolio of clients, probably dozens of millions of clients, and more importantly, a commercial track record of decades with them, right? And one of the accelerators of this trend is the availability of new core banking platforms offered by banking as a service solutions or even outsourced services provided by traditional banks in Brazil. But my view is that many of these newcomers prefer to launch their own digital bank, and they manage to do it in a very short period of time. So for most of these use cases or opportunity, Mambu is being considered the most recommended solution here. Another important trend is the innovation in the payment area. So instant payments, just Eduardo just mentioned, we call PIX here, were also implemented in 2021. And the adoption was very, very fast, overcoming daily transactional volumes of other electronic means like we have here, TED and DOC, in less than 6 months. In general, Brazil is presents a very quick acceptance for these new financial products, such as digital wallets, digital payments, payments using your cell phone by approximation, this kind of stuff. And on the top of it, so the pandemic has resulted in many people making online purchases and operating bank accounts digitally for the first time. So part of this movement, in my view, to adopt digital channels is due to the payment of what we call emergency aid, okay, for sure. So financial inclusion is a big opportunity here and requires new types of solutions focusing on people who, we say the people who were out of the radar, right? And finally, about fintech. So those new players in Brazil are helping central banking changing the competitive landscape, right? So as Caroline mentioned in the beginning, so Brazil has a very concentrated, financial market. Almost 75% of the credit is concentrated in only 5 players. And the fintechs are supposed to enhance this financial market efficiency. They will have to speed up, the financial inclusion in my view, especially when we consider a developing country such as Brazil. Just for you guys to have an idea. So we estimate that we have more than 1,200 fintechs in the country, operating not only in the credit market, but also payments, financial management, investments, BaaS technology, bank as a service technology, debt renegotiation, crypto assets, and so on. That's it.
Thank you so much, Sergio. That was really interesting. Delbert, if you could give us a bit of your insight on the transatlantic perspective here.
Sure. I believe that just by looking at the panel composition here, we are going to find 3 very important lessons to further understand why there is a huge synergy and potential for collaboration between the markets. Number 1, we are talking about companies that are international. There are in more than 2 countries per se. Second, we are talking about companies that are tech-based, but that do cover a different range of the landscape of the financial services. We have a prime B2C company as N26, we have a payment company as Sumap, and we have 2 infrastructure companies covering different angles of the financial services industry, such as Mambu and ourselves. But in addition to that, we are talking about 4 companies that have rapidly expanded during the last couple of years. So when you add a wide variety of ranges of the fintech of the financial services landscape, tech-based international companies that are rapidly expanding, you can see that there is common ground for this expansion, and there is a need to further understand why and how financial services industry is changing the way that financial products are deployed to consumers. So you look at the Brazilian landscape, you see a lot of tech adoption, huge capital injection, a lot of unbanked consumers who need access to the financial services. But there are 2 other elements that are quite powerful for both countries. One, the number of people who are underbanked, who have eventually access to certain financial products and services, but not to all of them. And second, the very similar broad regulatory framework that Brazil, Europe, and particularly Germany, they have in regard to data privacy rules, open banking rules, and how that will enable different ways for financial products to be put in front of consumers. So Sergio duly pointed out elements like the impacts of open banking on how we can embed finance in the customer journey. And I believe that we all here are a good indication of the changes that those markets are seeing the last couple of years.
Thank you so much, David. I think that was the perfect, already kind of a summary that we kind of gained after this first round. I would like to maybe dig a bit deeper in what you said, dear panelists. Caroline, you mentioned the challenges in Germany that we have. I totally agree with you. It's terrible because you need cash all the time, whereas in so many other countries, people look at you strangely if you come up with your paper money and your little coins. What is it, the experiences that you make in other countries? I'm not sure, but I think that SumUp is also present in Brazil. So do you have any comparison of how fast this little wonderful machine that I think everybody who hates cash now loves in Germany? Even amongst my friends, SumUp is always mentioned as the true, real savior in this type of disaster here. So is there a different acceptance that you realize in Brazil, given that the Brazilians are naturally a bit more open-minded when it comes to innovation?
I think being German myself, that's a clear yes. Given, and Sergio just mentioned Pix entering the market, I think it was last year in summer, the adoption rate, what we see when it comes to wallets is actually incredible. And I think this describes these 2 markets very well. When SumUp entered in 2013 into the Brazilian market, it was very, let's say, early stage. Right now, we see a lot more, let's say, players in the market, which, of course, let's say, help the wider education of both markets. When you look at Germany, I would say we're competing more against traditional players such as Verifone or Ingenico, which are, I would say, very, let's say, very different in terms of style and how they're being perceived, versus when you look into Brazil, there's lots of different players. I think we all know Pix, we all know Mercado Pago, you know, Boleto, of course, is the most present payment method in Brazil. So I think there's a variety of differences, but also chances for Germany to, well, become more of an innovative market and learn from what's already happening in Brazil. So the answer to this is absolutely yes.
Interesting. So Brazil is here the front runner, and Germany will follow, I hope. Sergio, you mentioned, and also now, Caroline, you also repeated the fact that in Brazil you have so many, let's say, non-traditional banking players, which kind of rumble up the market. Does it make it easier to bring out your products? Especially, I'm thinking about N26, which is a rather traditional, let's say, product, at least here in Germany, or is it that you really change your product so strongly, as you mentioned, Eduardo, that you really look at the local needs and then launch maybe a different product that you do here than you do here in Germany?
Yeah, I wouldn't call our product traditional, and especially I think in Germany, in Europe overall. We kicked off the mobile strategy for banks, right? So completely taking out of the equation any physical branches, the manager, the account manager, So I think that we really brought a different take. But however, what we do have as a traditional side in German is that we have a full banking license, right? And that was very important for German because it is a traditional market, right? And it's interesting to note that different than Brazil, where we have completely a oligopoly with 5 different players, in Europe is already a very diversified market, the banking industry. And because of that, some of the huge advantages we had in Brazil for having a digital offer, such as zero cost, zero fees, and a better service, I think was already there in Germany. That's why I think in Brazil we have such a stronger pull from actually users, right? Because when you offer a better service with a lower price, I think we will definitely have a strong pull. But especially because I think this problem of access and cost is being solved already very well for the local market, we are coming with a different take, with a different solution. So we are customizing our product for local payment schemes, as I mentioned, Boleto, Pix, credit card, which we don't have actually in German. But we're also adding new features that are exclusive for Brazil, that will be exclusive for Brazil, which will mainly focus on financial planning, which from my perspective is a problem that many startups and traditional, our established startups and traditional players are trying to solve the problem of how can we help Brazilians save more and be better structuring their financial lives. And because German and I think Europe as a whole has such a low interest rate, actually most banks have focused more on solving, like, how can we help people to save? How can we make better investment decisions? So we plan to bring that aspect to Brazil and help Brazilians actually save more and make better decisions. And try to forget credit. Of course, we offer credit. Credit in Brazil is such an important line of revenue, but we wanted to lower. We want our line of revenue from credit will definitely be larger than N26, but we hope to be lower than the average player in Brazil.
Wow, I mean, this economically, I think it's a good idea given the high indebtedness of private consumers in Brazil. So I think the whole economy will be thankful to your engagement. Sergio, I had the impression that being Mambu a German company, but is it possible that Brazil is the better market for your company?
Sure. As you know, so Mambu is present in more than 60 countries globally. So it's not a startup; it's a scale-up company. It just became a unicorn, after our last round in the beginning of 2021. And Brazil is the main pillar for the future growth of Mambu for the next 2 or 3 years, right? So we count on a main advantage because we have, just to have an idea, we have a single code that runs in every single country where we operate in. So Mambu, obviously we did some adaptations, for the Brazilian market. So we had to implement some local requirements, such as the compound interest, and the taxes on financial operations like the IOF, and also the working day basis, accrual basis, which is a feature only, globally speaking, only a single feature of the Brazilian market. So I used to say that we sort of exported, the compound interest to other countries, because now they are part of Mambu feature. So any country in the globe can use compound interest right now. So, but we count on this advantage because our platform is very flexible, it's API based, so it's a cloud native solution, very scalable. So we can connect ourselves to, to very ancient, legacy systems, traditional ones, and also to very brand new solutions, more modern solutions. And we, at the end of the day, can, establish the base for a bank to create, the journey to the bank of the future. So that's what we are focusing in Brazil. Brazil is a huge market for us. We are not focusing on the traditional banks from tier 1 to tier 5, but we are talking to, to traditional lenders, to neobanks, to credit unions, which is also, a very huge market in Brazil. So, and they pretty much, adapt, I would say. But it's very easy for them to be adapted to the Brazilian market. We have a local team already, with local professionals who know the markets, have a local relationship with the companies, with the banks here, with the financial players. And they are planning to make Brazil probably one of the biggest countries in terms of revenue and presence of Mambu globally. That's my challenge here of my team.
Good luck with that, but I have the impression that you might be very successful with that. I have a question, Delbert. You, after you gave us this wonderful overview, thank you again for that. Is it? I mean, as far as I understood, Salary Fits is a company. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that also needs quite some adaptation to the local market, since of course all the labor laws and the possibilities of data protection is different in Brazil and European Union. At the same time, we heard already, and I learned today, that the regulatory framework, Brazil and European Union, is similar. But how much do you have to adapt your product, and how much work do you have to put into when you internationalize, when you go to Germany?
Great. So don't get me wrong. Should we start this international expansion that we have started back in 2016? Should we have started that in 2010? We would have a way different scenario, and it would be a bigger challenge for sure. On the tech perspective, we have a very similar proposition than the ones that Mambu has. So we are a cloud-based system, open API, leveraging a lot in terms of the connections through APIs and open banking with banks. And we have a single code. So on the tech perspective, we don't need to change a lot. But on the flip side of things, we do have to adapt a lot, the sort of, as you have duly spotted, the parameters within which our system operates to be able to offer payroll loan propositions to consumers across the different markets that we operate. So indeed, we have benefited from the fact that we thought during more than 10 years that we have a very Brazilian-like product, because the payroll loan market in Brazil has developed since 2002. As far as I'm concerned, and as far as the markets that we know, is the biggest form of payroll loan, consumer loan market across the world. And that being said, in Brazil, we had, in the more than 20 different states that we have, local regulations for all of them. So we had in the past to adapt our platform to work with different parameters within these different states in Brazil. And that helped us a lot when we grew international. So we had, by the time that we went international, we had engaged in Brazil with more than 180 different financial institutions here. We process way more than 1/3 of the Brazilian payroll loan market at the moment. So we were incumbent in Brazil when we moved overseas, and that enabled us to adjust a little bit our platform, in addition to the language, of course, to be able to tackle all of those markets. Of course, being the UK and being able to launch the product there in 2018, alongside the data protection law, GDPR at that time, was also good for us, because we were born like compliant with that end of things. But don't get me wrong, we had a few bits and pieces in terms of how we put the product to the market that were quite different. So brief, I love to tell this story. I'll be brief on that, but it's very powerful in that sense. We were in the UK pitching to our first lender, first client in the UK, about all of the tools that we had in terms of ID verifications that could range from OTPs on the cell phone to fingerprints. And everything that we were showing to them, they said, no, this is creating friction in the journey. We don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want to initiate the journey with the national insurance number. We don't want to initiate the journey with the cell phone number, nothing of that. And then we said, but how come are we going to avoid frauds? And then they looked at me and said, why someone is going to do that? I said, because it's a fraud. And then they said, but this is the police problem, not our problem. We don't want any of that. We just want first name, last name, and date of birth. And it happened that 2.5 years later, we had originated more than 100 million pounds in loans through the platform and not a single fraud. So we had to learn and we had to adapt. And that's part of what Eduardo said about being global, but also understanding the local specificities.
That's a really interesting look at it. So we got some questions. I'm sorry, I can't listen to you and read at the same time. So multitasking is not a specialty of mine. So there is one question to everyone, which I'm not so sure if I understand it, but if I understand it right, I don't know if you can read it. It's rather a description of how the banking market is organized in the respective country. Maybe Rodrigo, can you a bit and explain in the chat how you mean it? So, and then we have a question to Eduardo, which is. I will just read it, okay? On the Brazilian market, we have different products and services when it comes to payment methods. What do you see and consider the main challenges when integrating data from these products and services and working with them cross-company while joining a new market with these sort of different products? Eduardo, can you help us out with that?
Yeah, this might be a long conversation. So I think one of the main challenges we find when we look for Brazilian companies, and I'm really trying to be specific because I know you guys probably offer services, so I'll try to really provide some more insightful feedback. So documentation is usually a big hurdle for us. So when you compare the quality of documentation of players in other markets and in Brazil, usually Brazilians lag behind. So I think that's an opportunity to actually do a better job there and actually differentiate. The other thing is when you're trying to put together a bank from scratch, you're actually figuring out what is your Lego, right? And then you have different players with different partnerships. So sometimes if you choose one bank to support your settlement, and then that will come with the one you will actually be able to do boleto, so it's actually figuring out what are all the aspects of your offering. Sometimes it's difficult. And when you're entering as a new player and you might not have those partnerships, sometimes you might be chosen over for others because you're going to have better pricing, right? So I think finding good partnerships from scratch that actually help you have a more complete offering, I think it's important. What else? Another challenge we find is, again, because of this Lego, you have a lot of different processing times, right? So sometimes you do like the service, you do like the price, but then the processing time is just too slow, and this really impacts the experience. So making sure that the response times are good enough for the market, I think it's also very important. And support. I think we are integrating many partners at the same time. So having a good support, a good team that can help us actually do that faster and with a better experience, I think it's crucial. It's very common for people to actually reach out to me to ask about the providers we have hired, So every time we do have a good service, we make sure that we put that clearly for the new the new prospect of the company. And I think that really helps when we can put a very good word. And so I think those are a couple of aspects that come to my mind right now.
Thank you
Caroline,
so much.
Can I add a point to Eduardo's
Of course, Sergio.
answer? I think that, picking up on what he just said, building this Lego bank is going to be crucial in the future, right? Because the demands from the market will change very quickly. The consumer behavior of the financial products consumer behavior will change very quickly as well. So I think that adding up to his point, so this partnership and the partnership management, the partnership building is going to be key, right now and much more important in the future, because it's going to be impossible for you to be good at everything. So you have to combine. We call it, at Mambu, we call it composable bank. You're going to be partnering with other pieces of solutions in the market, in order to be able to address your client needs, in order to be successful in the market, in order to be more innovative, in order to shorten, the time to market, in order to be more attractive in terms of product offer, service offer. So it's going to be key in the future. So players who know how to deal with partners, for long-term relationships, are going to add, much more value to their offer. That's my view as well.
Thank you so much. So I think the question that Rodrigo now specified a bit is quite interesting, because it really fits well to the question we are discussing, because being partnership a very important aspect of future success. Who do you think is going to make the race? Sergio, you mentioned that we discussed that in Brazil, especially, we have new banking actors on the market who are, I have the impression, creating partnerships that nobody had expected before to be happening. And what is going to happen? Now we have the little forecast. What do you guys see? How big is the chance that these new players are going to make the race and the old dinosaurs, be it in Brazil, the 5 big players, or even in Germany, where we have a very diversified banking system, but still the banks are very traditional. Carolyn pointed it out. Not only the payments are very traditional, but also the banks are very traditional. That's why N26 really was very successfully in Germany. So I would like to know of you 4. Rodrigo wanted to know, but I add my search for knowledge. I would like to know who is going to make the race. What do you think? Have the old and traditional banking systems in Brazil and Germany still a chance to survive? Maybe we start with Caroline.
I love this question, and I think it's not, it shouldn't be the question of who's going to win the race, but I think creating healthy competition and also challenging, especially the traditional banking systems in Germany, is definitely something we will likely see more of in the next couple of years. I think providing our customers with more of a 360 service, and banking is one part of that potentially, is something which was going to be more and more important, because right now you would see merchants and also customers having a very, let's say, fragmented stack of providers they work with, right? And as Sergio rightfully said, it's more about creating meaningful partnerships and creating value for the customer, and whether that is moving into retailers moving into banking, or mobile companies moving into banking, or I mean, we are partnering with, for instance, N26 on that front, right? It's more a matter of what creates value for our customers. I don't think it's going to be an either or. I think it's a good, innovative, healthy competition, especially in the German market, and I do believe also in the Brazilian market, to say, can fintechs and scale-ups or startups challenge traditional banking solutions and make sure that they continue to innovate, rather than remaining there, because it's always been like this for the past 100 years. so to say.
Yeah, totally. That's interesting. David, I have the impression you're really moving in a very traditional area, being a very new player. What do you think of the whole situation?
Yeah, so I mean, it's quite clear at this stage. If you look at what N26 has done in Europe, for example, or if you look to what Nubank or Banco Inter, among others, have made in Brazil, it's very clear that you can be a challenger and you can rapidly expand in different geographies, either being Brazil, Europe, or you can take a couple of examples in the UK, for example, just to name some. But for me, the big question is not who is going to win. It's way more how they are going to win. And we come from a moment 5 years ago in which we used to call, or we called digital banks such as N26 as neobanks. And now they are digital banks. Neobanks are going to be something totally different. The way that financial products are being deployed are changing rapidly. We are seeing the trend of embedded finance and rebundling of the way of financial products are bundled together to create a better customer experience, change the way that the financial landscape is being put in front of the consumer. And when Sergio, when Eduardo, when they talk about building a Lego bank, it's all about finding the right ways to bridge the gap between consumers, where they are, and how the financial products are going to be put in front of them. So the winners are going to be the ones who duly understand and tackle for me, the following question. In the past, people used to go to the bank to be able to consume financial products, either offline or online. Now the bank needs to put the right product in front of the right consumer. And that's a very different perspective. And the ones who will be winning within this landscape are the ones who are able to both understand that and tackle that issue.
Sergio, you win in any case, I guess, because you can play with both sides. Or do you see one of of your customers being the better winner in this game?
So I don't think we're going to have losers or winners. I really believe that the future, it's just started to being built right now. So big banks or mid-sized banks are partnering, for example, with fintechs. Okay, so they combine. They have a much powerful product offer. So if you analyze, a very traditional bank in Brazil. So they have capital, they have a tradition, credibility, and etc. So they have a huge client base. So when they partner with a fintech, which comes to the market with something innovative, a new product offer, a new way to to create a new sort of much more interesting user experience, like N26 is bringing to the market here as well. This combination of things, is gonna be this future Lego bank. So I don't see winners and losers. I do see a completely different, competitive landscape where you have to be prepared to change very quickly. You have to be prepared, to add other products to your product offer, and your service offer as well. You need to have a very open-minded team in order to, to understand this market moves very quickly, in order to position yourself in a very aggressive way, in order to tackle the opportunity. So time to market is going to be key in this new scenario we're going through. And some technologies like Mambu and some other technologies we see in the market, will help our clients, from a big size bank to a small credit union to address these opportunities. That's my view.
Thank you so much. So Eduardo, what do you think? Who might be the best partner for you then in Brazil? Is it going to be a new player, or is it going to be dinosaur, or are you going to?
It's going to be N26 for sure. Yeah, just kidding. But a couple of comments on the question there. So I do think that startups, they came to the banking market specifically with faster and cheaper solutions, right? And very much focused on payments and credit. And I think they have done a good job there. So payment revenue, most likely for new startups, is almost dead, right? I think that right now, usually banks make like maybe 30%, 20, 40% of revenues from payments. And I think that's definitely going down because of embedded payments, because of peaks, because of, it's becoming a commodity. So I think those players who are already there, like SumUp, who have already found their space, they'll make a lot of money because it's a commodity market. You can make a lot of money if you're the incumbent there. But I think that for new players, I think that will not be the path anymore. And however, even though that was a good move, let's be clear that the market is not disrupted yet. Brazil, 80% of all the revenues from banking still goes to the 5 biggest banks. Mm-hmm. And even though Nubank is now valued among all the largest ones, there's still the second or third option in everyone's wallet. Everyone still have their most transactions and banking service with the traditional players. So that's where I think there's opportunity. Because actually, when startups broke down all the financial services, I think they forgot to offer better financial advice. So, and I think that's where most of the market is now trying. That's the problem that the market is trying to tackle with financial education, with XP, with all the brokers. But I think there's still a lot of space on how to actually help people make better decisions. For me, that's where innovation is going to come from. And that's what the problem that we'll try to tackle in Brazil.
So I have the impression if all these fintech companies are going international, we are going to improve the world for a lot of people. My question would be, we have now different fintechs participating in this workshop, participating in this digital tour to Germany. I would like to know a bit, what are the advantages of internationalization? Of course, it's the market, that's for sure. But do you see other maybe cultural things in the forefront that might help you? You might see some skilled labors that you have in Brazil or that you have in Berlin. Where do you see advantages of going global, apart from the fact that you, of course, grow your customer base? And this would be one question to you, which I would like to ask you in a round. And the second question is, all of you mentioned how important partnerships are if you want to enter a market. Do you have another suggestion for the startups that are participating here, what they should definitely do if they, as Brazilian startups, come to Germany and want to set up their operations here? Caroline, being the one in Berlin, how do you welcome these people?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. I think, you mentioned something very important, and despite, increasing your customer base, going global, I think culture is a very important part of internationalization. When you look at everyone on the panel, but then also SumUp, we work with over 50 nationalities across the globe. I think we're at 19 offices and 34 markets. And that gives us a lot of value, not only from a German perspective or a British perspective, but also from a Brazilian perspective, from other markets which add different perspectives into the product development, for instance. And culture plays, I think, the biggest part, given the fact that diverse minds, diverse experiences, and diverse market innovation create value for a company. So everyone going global, I would always say, spend time in the market you want to go to. And also, as Delbert said, acknowledge the similarities of a market, which we have to a certain extent in Brazil and Germany, but also acknowledge the differences we have in the market, and create a value system where both markets can exist, but then also leave room for everyone to innovate based on local particularities, right? So what works in Germany might not work in Brazil. Just to give you a very practical example, in the European markets, we've launched a consumer wallet, versus that's not active in Brazil because there's different reasons for that. But understanding cultural differences, market trends, and acting according to that is very important when you go global 100%.
As far as understood, Eduardo, that's more or less the same strategy that N26 is having. But do you see any other opportunities in internationalizing in apart from having a grown market?
Yeah. So I think from a startup perspective, I think this exposure to investors is very important, right? Because then you can actually grow your TAM and you have exposure to more to larger wallet investors. And I think that's quite important. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I think it's always possible to cross offer products, right? So it's very common that we have a product being launched in France, and then it's very cool product. So then let's copy this to the US and let's copy this to Germany. So you have more of this. Different countries have different problems, so we have more space for being creative and actually bringing cool things for every market. So I think that's an advantage. However, I just wanted to touch some on the downsides as well, because for instance, in N26 we have over 80 nationalities working at the company, which is amazing. But sometimes it becomes like a Babel tower, right? So when you have when everything is going well, I think it's a major opportunity. But when things are not going that good, the difference in culture make communication much more difficult. So it's important to actually focus on trying to understand how to communicate with different language, with different cultures and different countries, to make sure that, especially in times when things go bad, we actually can lower complexity and communicate better. And on the actually, what are one thing that I would like to point out of difference between Brazil and Germany and Europe that I have suffered a little bit in the past is with contracts. So here in Brazil, we usually we start working even before we do have contract, right? So we just agree among us, and then we just start doing, and then later we're gonna get the contract. Then later we set the commercials, and then things just happen, and it's fine for us, right? That's not the case with German players or Europe players as a whole, So really trying to focus on you need to think before starting the project that you need a lot of time to actually write the right contract, agree on the aspects, and so forth. So it will be a long job to actually get your contract assigned. So account for that. I have it in the past, and I've suffered because of that for sure.
I totally agree on that. So that would be that would pay into the culture aspect that Caroline mentioned, I guess. Sergio, I mean, you also mentioned you have more or less the same base, and then you kind of adapt it a bit to the respective market. What is it? What is the biggest challenge then for Mambu if you go into other markets?
I think as any other company that starts operating in a different market. So besides having a good solution, I think that you have to analyze, very well the scenario locally. You need to understand the peculiarities. I think Caroline mentioned that before, of the market, which is pretty much important, especially with, when we talk about Brazil. So the cultural understanding is also very important, because it impacts the client behavior, the consumer behavior. And having said that, the client segmentation is also important, because the way you for example, you behave or you offer your solution to a tier 1 banks is different from the way you deal, for example, with a smaller player or a traditional lender, probably. And also in Brazil, it also depends on the region we're talking about. Okay, so the region, the states of the country we're talking about may impact the way you interact with your clients as well. So as Eduardo mentioned as well, so legal and the legal and the regulatory framework, understanding it deeply is very important, for you to be able to operate in Brazil. As I mentioned before, I think that, that's why you have you need to have a very skilled team here. You need to design a long-term strategy, which, is implemented, in short-term steps, that have to be taken very carefully. You have to review your strategy all the time. As I mentioned before, so you need to establish, strong partnerships, because it's very difficult to succeed by your own in a country like Brazil. But I think even though we have a huge opportunity, you need to pick the right partners. So our opportunity here, to be tackled is huge. We are speeding up, in our client base in Brazil, and expanding this client base, very quickly, because we have a platform that evolves every single week. So anything I do, for example, in Europe, based on the open banking, open finance strategy, and it's being parameterized or configured in my platform. So everybody, all my clients can benefit from it all over. So in every country. So this gives us, a way to be a platform that, will really build the bank of the future, and will help us to do or to be positioned as the main player of core banking in Brazil. So that's the way we see the market here. That's the opportunity we have to explore in Brazil, and obviously not only Brazil, but all the other markets that Mambu is present right now.
Thank you so much, Sergio. So we got some more questions from the audience, and there's one question which is again a little forecast of what the future might bring, and I have the impression that Delva might be give us an interesting answer. So Delva, what do you think might be the next breakthrough in the Brazilian financial sector? That is a really forward-looking question.
Should I know that for sure, I would be starting my next company, but
come on, give us a little
no, jokes apart. I strongly believe that we are in the middle of a huge flip in terms of how the financial products are being deployed. As I have previously mentioned, it's not about having the best product. It's about finding the way to deliver this good product into the hands of the right consumer at the right time. No one wakes up saying, I need a loan. But lots of Brazilians wake up saying, I need to renew my house, I need to buy a new car, I need something else. I need to plan ahead and have a good pension scheme. So you have life needs, and therefore you have financial needs. And the way that financial products are going to be put in the front of consumer, when the consumer have this financial need, is the biggest element. So please, when you think about the financial landscape, do not only think about building good products, but you should also think about infrastructure opportunities as well. So for N26 to be able to deliver the best consumer product in Brazil, they need a lot of support of companies that will enable the payment scheme, or companies that will support them in terms of building their core banking infrastructure, or companies that will support them to link their products to employees of companies, as we do, for example. So we should not only think about the best product, but we should think about the way to bridge the gap between the product and the consumer. So therefore, I believe that the biggest breakthrough is going to be in the way that financial products and services are offered more than anything else.
I would say that's a perfect lookout. So I have a question, Pedro. Can we overstep the time for a couple of minutes, or do we have to finish right now? Because I have two more questions from the audience.
Yes, we can address these questions.
Yeah, so wonderful. There's one question about accepting crypto coin as a currency in Germany. I mean, apart from the fact that at the moment it's not an accepted currency like from the government wise, but of course it might be become stronger, I guess, in the payment between companies or between consumers and companies. Caroline, do you have any insights in this issue? Do you see that happening?
I think what Delbert said is actually really helpful here, because he said you have to deliver the right product at the right time to the right consumers. And there was a time when that's like 2013, I think, when we were testing, accepting cryptocurrency, which back then was out of question that this is going to happen. But what you see, especially in Europe, there's companies like Bitpanda, Bitwala, they're all starting to rise above the horizon. So it's definitely an interesting topic. I don't think that cryptocurrency at this point is, as you said, accepted by the government, but then also ready for, let's say the average consumer and the average merchant. So because it's quite intransparent, as we all know. But I'm curious to see what's going to happen, that's for sure.
Rodrigo, you still have your hand up. Is it okay, or you want to add something to your question?
No, it is okay. It's just a question that because as our company is specialized in cross-border transactions, we already do accept Pix, TED, Bolero, and etc. We are just putting our first seed in German right now. Bruno, which is participating on this call as well, is going to be based in Munich. And one question that is recurrent on the last quarter from our customers and also some leads, if Facilita accepts crypto as a currency for payment. So, and it's something that's raising really fast here all over Latin America. You saw El Salvador already accepting Bitcoin as a currency on their country. And I just want to know if this is the same movement that Europe is going through, if there is a movement for crypto acceptance. We ourselves are not ready to accept crypto, but it's something that we are looking for on the future. So that's my question.
Well, Caroline, maybe I don't see it at the moment, to be honest, that it's going to be an officially accepted currency. But this is my personal opinion, not working for the economic ministry. It would be the finance ministry anyways. But I don't see it at the moment, but I guess everybody owning Bitcoin would be happy if my prediction would be wrong.
So I think I agree with you, especially looking at Germany, which is fairly, well, you could call it a development country where we look at into payment services, right? Yeah. That said, I think crypto is a bit too early for this market. However, I would recommend you to look more into the compliance regulatory side of things, given that there's a number of things which are currently very challenging. And then on the other side, I would again raise the questions if the consumers are simply ready for accepting crypto as a currency, which is very volatile, very unpredictable, and yeah. So
and given the fact that Caroline rightly mentioned how traditional we are in payments, I don't see a huge amount of the population accepting cryptocurrencies at the moment. But maybe if we have 10 more years of summer payments, then it's going to get better. So we have one more question here, which I at the moment try to understand, but maybe Paulo, if you can ask it personally, because I'm trying to understand it. I'm sorry, I can't read and talk at the same time. I don't know.
I can make the point if you want.
Ah, there he is. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, but my question would be, is actually what we saw, the development, is that there are many payment or investment or digital banking stuff for consumers. But we don't see a lot of them for companies. For instance, the N26 in Germany here has a account for, let's say, for entrepreneurs even, but it's only the natural person. My question, because we here in Germany, we do internationalization for Brazilian companies. We have a lot of Brazilian companies here, and they need to make payments, cross-border payments. And my question would be, if there is the perspective to have operations or products designated for companies and not only for natural persons. That would be the question. Thank you.
So Eduardo, I guess the question is directed to you.
So SMEs, yes. Companies, probably not in the foreseeable future. Supporting a company is completely different problem than it is supporting a person, at least a bigger company, right? So that's not the problem that we're trying to tackle right now. But on the other hand, I do know of many players trying to tackle that market, such as Cora, Linker, and then they're doing a very good job in offering digital banks for a bit larger companies. And on the payment and remittance side, you have Wise, you have Remes online. So there are players that can help in that end. Even though actually making things really easy, that you can have multiple accounts with a number of accounts that you can give to other people in other markets, not only like to use a card, right? It is still a long way to go. I think we now have in Brazil a proposition to actually be able to hold dollars and foreign currencies in your bank. So if you're a bank, or if you're maybe even a CD, will be able to hold dollars within your balance. So I think if we have that will be much more easy to actually do payments internationally, and you'll be able to see more interesting products.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. So there's no more question at the moment here in the chat. And since my esteemed colleagues from the panel might have their job to do and expand their company's activities in Brazil and Germany, I want to thank you here very, very much for participating in this panel. It's been a great pleasure for me. I learned a lot, and I hope that also the audience got quite some interesting insights in all your activities. If you have any more further questions, I guess you can always contact Pedro. I'm on LinkedIn. I guess our panelists are also, and I hope that you have some more great days with a lot of insights in the coming days. So I wish you a wonderful evening and day in Brazil, and thank you so much. And Pedro, probably you want to say some words before we all pop apart.
Oh, I just would like to thank you all. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, Sergio, Eduardo, and Delbert, for this great panel. I think our startups and all the audience in general has learned a lot from your experiences that you shared here with us. So thank you very much, and well, success to all of you.
Valeu, pessoal.
Valeu, obrigado.
Valeu, obrigado.
Grande
Thanks.
prazer.
Obrigada. Tchau.
Tchau.
Tchau, tchau. Boa tarde a todos.